What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NFL live stream. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me, of course, Jen Piacenti.
Right.
Jen, I got to tell you, man, it is coming down to it right now. Here we are. It's right before Labor Day weekend. Final drafts coming up. I mean, literally in 1 week, we will have kickoff week 1 in the NFL.
Unbelievable. And how many drafts are you doing in this week?
This week? Oh, I think I've already done 4 in the last 3 days. I think I've got 2 more coming up tonight. And then, believe it or not, before even kickoff next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, I have a couple of drafts there as well that I'm going to have to end up doing. How about you? I know that the Fantasy Alarm Man Smart, Woman Smarter League, that actually drafts on Wednesday night here. How about you? What else do you have?
I have one more auction draft after that, and it's going to be on Wednesday night, right before, the 4th. So it's getting down to it.
I mean, could you blame anybody for wanting to do all of their drafts the night before? I mean, can we just? You did videos for us over at Fantasy Alarm. And I mean, listen, it was great because you did one video. It was on the Andrew Luck fallout. You did another video on the Lamar Miller injury here. I mean, just kind of give me an overview. Everybody should go over to fantasyalarm.com and you should check out Jen's the full video here. But, kind of sum it up for us here. Vomitous or what?
Yeah, I mean, how was your Saturday night? Because mine was pretty crazy. I imagine yours was too. Yeah, so first we have, first run of the season, Lamar Miller gets taken down and a torn ACL. I mean, can it get any worse than that? I mean, he hasn't even had a regular season game yet. The guy's out. And in a contract year. Sucks. But there's some excitement for someone like Duke Johnson, right? So these are all, if you already drafted Lamar Miller, that sucks. If you haven't drafted yet, you have a chance to speculate on Duke Johnson. So there's a lot that you can adjust now that you know. And then, of course, the biggest news of all, the Andrew Luck bomb. What? You're retiring? You're not going to be slow. Because we were talking, he may not be back the first week, a couple weeks. What are you going to do in the meantime? He could be a steal. No, he's just not coming back. We've got Jacoby Brissett. And that, of course, affects all the cast around him as well. So just so many ripples. And I imagine so many people were drafting the night before that day. And already their entire plan is like, wow, got to start working the waiver wire.
Oh yeah. I was talking to Jim Boat and he was complaining about all his shares of Andrew Luck in best ball formats where he's like, my team's done. He's like, my team is just finished.
Can't do anything. You're done. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's talk here about, some of these ripple effects that occur here, but let's do it in relation to what we've got coming on here as far as drafts go, because it's really right now, if you're watching this stream, then you're looking for some last minute advice, whether it's a snake draft, whether it's an auction. And I just kind of want to, go through some of that. So with regard to the Andrew Luck stuff, are you interested in drafting a Jacoby Brissett? Are you avoiding Marlon Mack, T.Y. Hilton, Eric Ebron? Like, are you still in on those guys, or are you ready to walk away?
So I am still in on most of those guys with slight adjustments. I actually think Jacoby Brissett could be a very good quarterback. I would put him like quarterback number 20. He's certainly not someone you run out and get in an early round, but certainly as a secondary QB, absolutely. He is very talented. I mean, I know he's no Andrew Luck, but he's nothing to laugh at. He's a good quarterback, So I would take Jacoby Brissett in later rounds. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking for.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say T.Y. Hilton is the one I feel like needs the most adjustment. Because we do have data, right? Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback for 15 games in 2017. So we have a little bit of data of his target share. T.Y. Hilton did get the number 1 target share from Jacoby Brissett in 2017, but it was a career low completion rate, 52%. So for T.Y. So it just doesn't look like they connect that well. That scares me a little bit, as opposed to how well he did with Andrew Luck.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll throw in on that is that, aside from the fact that you now have, instead of Chuck Pagano as the head coach, you've got Frank Reich, who understands quarterbacks, in my opinion, a little bit better than Pagano did. In 2017, also, you had Pagano, who wasn't altering his scheme that much. His offensive coordinator wasn't changing it up that much because they were like, well, I mean, we got Andrew Luck coming back in 2 weeks. Why we're not going to reinvent the wheel here? There is no tomorrow for Andrew Luck. Like Frank Reich needs to make his plan, and they need to have their offense humming based on who they have under center. And that's the thing, is that they'll make those adjustments, I think, because Jacoby Brissett, I mean, listen, 260 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground for him in 2017. If he does improve his passing, I mean, that's not bad. That's like Dak Prescott range there.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason. And this guy has been under pressure both times. Even when he filled in for the Patriots, when he filled in for Jimmy Garoppolo, is filling in for Tom Brady for a few games. He did a good job. The guy has always been under pressure. They haven't been plays built for him, around him, and he's always done a very good job. Yes, he had the career, the league high in sacks the year he was with the Colts, but he also only threw 7 interceptions. So, there's positives there.
I think there's definite positives there. I'm with you. I'm not downgrading that much. I mean, I pulled him back on the cheat sheet, maybe a spot or two, maybe a drop a little bit in the rankings. I put Jacoby Brissett actually exactly where you where you were just saying that you would have him. So listen, I'm in on that. The only thing that I'm off of right now is that Vegas had, I think it was a 10.5 win total for the Colts this year. I was locking in on the over. I'm definitely locking in on the under right now, but not because I think that they're going to end up going like 4-12, because I think they'll end, they're more of like, they suddenly become more of an 8-8 or a 9-7 team without Andrew Luck.
They still have a great O-line. He still has good weapons. And I just think what's important is, are you going to get the same exact production from Jacoby Brissett you got out of Andrew Luck? No, they're not the same quarterback. But is he a useful piece? 100%. You just need to figure out how to put the piece in the puzzle. He's absolutely useful.
Now, how are you handling the backfield for the Houston Texans now? I mean, we were never really that high on Lamar Miller to begin with. Now you've got Duke Johnson, who's never had a full-time gig before. He's suddenly stepping up. You've got Damaria Crockett, Karan Higdon, Buddy Howell. These guys are all kind of fighting the whole thing.
Yeah,
I made a horrible joke. I made a horrible joke on the air the other day as my co-host was mispronouncing Damaria, and all of a sudden it became like the Pepto backfield with diarrhea and puke.
That went a long way, I'm sure.
Come on. Of course it goes a long way. Why? Because it's radio, and the lowest common denominator when you're driving home at work and you're on your commute, if somebody's making puke and diarrhea jokes, well, why the heck not? If your kids are in the back seat, it's even better.
Well, they might actually be contributing to that, so that's probably more of a nightmare situation.
If I cued one child to sing the diarrhea song, then I feel like I've done my work as a human being.
All right. So one day when I have children, I won't be inviting Uncle Howard over.
Everybody loves Uncle Howard. Everybody loves Uncle Howard.
I bet they do.
They do. All right. So let's talk about this backfield.
So this backfield,
where are you bumping up Duke Johnson to? Are you interested in any of these other guys?
I'm definitely bumping up Duke Johnson. He's a $15 player to me now. He's really interesting. This guy, I know he's never had a full-time job, but when he has been on the field, he's been really productive, and he has great hands. He receives, and PPRs, there's a lot of value here. This guy could be a star. You never know. We're giving him the chance. In his first 3 seasons, he received over 500 yards. That's fantastic, and he didn't have a full-time job. So this kid's good, and I'm glad he's getting a chance. Now, what they're going to do to complement it, obviously, he's not going to do it by himself. So, Crockett is a bigger-bodied runner. I think they could use him for short yardage situations, and Higdon is a little more agile runner. They could use him for longer gains. Buddy Howell, Tywan Jones, Josh Ferguson, these guys, they've never proven that they can take a large workload. I don't know what's going to happen with them. I feel more optimistic about the rookies getting out there and getting their shot. And even more so, I'm pretty sure, Houston's going to look for someone, maybe Carlos Hyde, maybe he's going to come over because, Damian Williams and Dr. Thompson may have that job. And I think there's options there. I don't see them going out and making the big trade everyone's talking about for Melvin Gordon. I just don't see that happening, but I guess it's possible. It's possible.
Possible. It's definitely possible. I've heard Melvin Gordon. I've heard Kenyon Drake. I've heard Carlos Hyde. Everybody's speculating something.
Who knows?
Right? Yeah. Gronk's coming out of retirement to play running back for the Houston Texans.
Gronk's not coming out of retirement. He's using CBD now. He's got a full-time endorsement gig. Come on.
Right? Pretty good gig to endorse,
He's doing just fine.
All right. One of the things now, guys, the Fantasy Alarm Ultimate Cheat Sheet and the Draft Guide, obviously still available. If you're doing your drafts this weekend, there's really no better tool than the Ultimate Cheat Sheet. It's full sets of rankings, PPR standard, with a draft grid that maps everything out round by round, half round by half round, actually. Auction values, where to take players, and we update it regularly. This morning we did an update because I tell you, been a lot of talk, especially on SiriusXM, about the concept of handcuffing. There are those who are for it. There are those who are against it. Now, I've always been of the frame of mind that it's a case-by-case basis, and I think that pretty much everybody who favors handcuffing believes that as well. But one of the things that I needed to do with the cheat sheet here was there are 3 very specific handcuffs right now in Darwin Thompson of the Chiefs, Alexander Mattison of the Vikings. And Tony Pollard of the Cowboys. And my feeling about it is because it's really interesting. People are like, well, I got the 4th pick. What if the big 3 come off the board? What would you do at that 4th pick? And I'm like, you take Zeke. But you make sure that you handcuff him to Tony Pollard. You have to do it. If you're going to draft Damian Williams, you have to do it with Darwin Thompson. These are guys who have specific roles already carved out. Like, unlike the Melvin Gordon situation where Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson are going to split that role. And they're always going to split that role. It's not, it's not a one-back system. When you look at Minnesota, Dallas, Kansas City, each of these coaches, they like to utilize one running back primary. And then it's that system that really makes that running back thrive. So these 3 handcuffs specifically for me, so I had to do in the cheat sheet, I had to say, if you own the primary, well, then you got to take your handcuffs here in I think it was like the 7th round. Because what's happening now is that in like the 8th, 9th, 10th round even, other teams who are looking to build up depth are stealing handcuffs because these guys all have potential big-time roles in their offenses here. Like 7th round, I hate doing that, but is that too early for you? Or you like, maybe avoid having the must handcuff people?
Maybe avoid that. That's one option, but I agree with you that if you do, then you have to grab that handcuff, because I know if I'm sitting there and 7th round goes by and 8th round comes around and I know that you have Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard still on the board, not only could I get a lot of production out of Tony Pollard, I could potentially really bring you down. And I know maybe that's a naughty way to think, but we're here to win.
So aggressive.
Right? We're here to win. And you know what? I like Darwin Thompson anyway. So, it goes by and I'm not going to feel sorry for you. Sorry. If you don't get Darwin Thompson, it comes around and I've got a nice spot for him. I'm going to take him. This isn't like charity, I'm going to take him. So you got to be smart.
Maybe one day UNICEF will go into the fantasy football business, but for right now, it doesn't work like that.
This poor person had to take Zeke. You must let them have Tony Pollard. No. If you had the 4th pick and you got to take Zeke, then I'm going to go get your Tony Pollard if you're not smart enough to snatch him. So
now, Darwin Thompson, if you had a choice of sniping somebody's handcuff, let's just say you're sitting there, it's 10th round, and these handcuffs are on the board, and you're like,
sitting there? Yeah.
Who's more important? Who's the better handcuff to steal?
Darwin Thompson. Yes. Absolutely. Without question. Because I'm sorry, Zeke is going to play for the Cowboys and he's still going to get the majority of the time. Darwin Thompson, Damian Williams is an injury risk too. Zeke really isn't an injury risk. Of course, any running back's an injury risk, but historically he's pretty sturdy. Damian Williams is, he even started preseason with some hamstring issues. And so I think Darwin Thompson is an absolute steal.
I love that call. I've never been a big Damian Williams fan. I mean, you're talking about a guy who had trouble cracking the starting lineup in Miami for a number of years. And they were drafting garbage players and, in order to replace him. And he was still sticking around, but I mean, it was terrible, terrible situation there. All right, so we're on the same page here as far as handcuffs go. Guys, you can check it out, fantasyalarm.com. Inside the draft guide, you'll see the handcuff report, handcuff grid. It's completely updated as well, in order to just kind of help you out. Now, again, and in that article, I explain players who you do handcuff, players who you don't handcuff. Because, listen, let's face facts. If Saquon Barkley goes down, okay, I'm not looking to start Wayne Gallman in my fantasy lineup. I don't care how great Saquon looks in this offense. It's because it's Saquon. It's not because it's just the system there. So, like a guy like Wayne Gallman, no. A guy like Jordan Scarlett in Carolina, probably not.
Right.
But a guy like Latavius Murray, I'll take him.
Absolutely.
So, guys, check that out, fantasyalarm.com/draft now if you want to get yourself a copy of either the cheat sheet or the draft guide or both. Do the NFL package. They're just, for whatever inane reason, decided that Howard's work is not worth anything, so we're basically giving this stuff away for the most insane cost. But, hey, you know what? You're not paying for this live stream either. So
yeah, but be like Jen and just think about winning and don't worry about charity. Take all the free advice you can get.
There it is. Take all the free stuff. All the free stuff. Now, one of the things when we were talking about Duke Johnson, you said something, and I got to tell you, Jen, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
I really got the warm fuzzies when you said something about Duke Johnson. You were like, he's a $15 player. And I'm like, auction talk, baby.
Oh, that's my favorite. I love it. I love it. There's so much creativity. There's so many ways. The thing about the auction is you can get who you want to get, right? If you're willing to pay $75 for Saquon Barkley, you want him that badly, you can do it if you choose. I would not choose, but that's the fun thing about an auction draft. And the other fun thing about an auction draft is how much you can redesign on the fly. You just pivot. You don't know what everyone else is going to do. It's so much fun. I think auction drafts are the best.
I love auction drafts. I will do auction drafts over and over again. Let's talk a little strategy in auction drafts. You know what? I mean, that's the best part is that there's obviously more than one way to skin a cat, and there's more than one way to win a championship. So when you sit down at the auction table, before you sit down actually in the war room, do you set yourself up a budget? How much do you break up for each of the positions, or do you do it based on tiers? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah. So I do a general budget. I say I want to allow, say, X amount for running backs, X amount for wide receivers, X amounts for quarterbacks, etc. And I tell myself, that's about what I want to do. So maybe I want a 40 and a 10 is something like that to go together. But then it changes. It just changes because that's how it is. And you have to go with the room, and you have to read the room. You have to play the room, and you have to keep a lot of lists. You need to figure out where you are. You cannot lose track. And when you get really advanced, you can really start tracking what everybody else is doing too. But when you first start the auction draft, you just have to keep really good track of where your money is, where it's going, and who's left on the board. And of course, there's lots of different ways to do it. If you did get Saquon Barkley and spend $60, how much more are you going to spend on running backs? How much allocation does running back get in your league? Are you just going to go get
yummy.
couple $1 players? Are you just going to say 75% of my budget is all running backs and everybody else is going to be a buck?
I don't know. You tell me. What do you?
It's fun.
What do you like to do? Listen. What we can talk about, hypotheticals till the cows come home. But everybody's tuning in because they're like, Jen Piacenti, how do you run an auction? That's what we want to know. Give us the winning strategy. You're in the Gotham leagues for both baseball and football. You're slapping around guys like Rick Wolf and Glenn Colton and Nando DeFino and Adam Ronis and that whole crew. I want to know. They want to know. People watching right now want to know, how do you slap these guys around?
Well, my special skill with these guys is getting them to spend a lot of money up front. And then they kind of get caught at the end. And at the end, I hear a lot of this, oh, that was a good buy. Oh, that was still on the board. God, Chin did it again. That's my favorite part. But how I allocate is, I would say in $200 budget, I would spend 150 of that probably between wide receiver and running back.
150,
and leave $50 for everything else. That's a very, very loose, But if suddenly there's a run on a player, I'll borrow from my budgets.
No doubt. Listen, I was doing that. I did an auction a few weeks ago, and I allotted 170 combined for wide receivers and running backs, and then for quarterback and tight end, I allotted $28, and then $1 for one defense and $1 for a kicker. And I do it that way. And then all of a sudden, I ended up with like Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz for a total of $9. And I immediately, I was like, take all of that money there, boom, running back and wide receiver. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I was like, I'm not going for some like big crazy tight end here. I mean, Kelsey's off the board, Kittle's off the board, Ertz is off the board. So there's no funds that I need to funnel to the tight end position there.
That's right.
Now, it's so funny. Dave Ganos is a guy who I've actually been doing auctions against for well over a decade now. Love this guy. He is phenomenal. The best strategy I ever saw was him in an auction. And all he does when he starts with his nominations is he starts off with the best kicker, Justin Tucker, and he nominates him for $1.
And nobody wants to spend on a kicker at that
point.
And
if nobody wants to spend, then he gets the guy there for $1, or he gets them to spend an extra $1 there or $2 to do that. He does that with his kickers. Then he does that with his defense. And basically, at some point, everybody, people in the room just get so annoyed. They're just like, whatever, and they just let him have it. So he's got like, the 4th-ranked defense and the 3rd-ranked kicker, and he's got them both for $1. So he doesn't even have to focus on that anymore.
Right. That's brilliant.
And then he does what you do. I don't want Saquon Barkley. These guys are just going to chew up their bankroll nonstop. And he just, boom, he starts nominating all the big names out there, all the highly talked about sleeper plays like the Chris Godwins of now, the Kenny Galladays, like these mediocre players that have all these truthers like just clinging to them. And he's just like, God, spend. And the next thing you know, he's like, oh, I got Calvin Ridley for like $11. And I don't know, for some reason, everybody just left me, David Montgomery for 18. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy stuff. Crazy.
Yeah.
So you prefer a more balanced attack, though, than opposed to the stars and scrubs?
Right. I do do a more balanced attack than stars and scrubs. Though I don't necessarily think stars and scrubs is a bad approach. It works for a lot of people, but for me, historically, when I've gone back and looked at when I've had real winning seasons, placed in the top 3, I've had a more boring team, if you will, right? Because there's always a risk. If you spend $60 on one player and that player gets injured, you've got to replace $60 worth of value. If I spread that value across 3 $20 players and one player gets injured, I only have to replace $20 worth of value. So, if I'm the stars and scrubs, I've lost $60 worth of value, and then I have a $1 guy who I speculated on, who I hope is awesome and maybe doing a great job, or maybe like done, maybe not being used at all ever.
First roster cut.
Right, absolutely. Meanwhile, if I have 3 $20 players and one $20 player goes down, I only have to find $20 worth of value on the waiver wire, which is very doable. So that's why I prefer that in the long. Of course, you get a couple stars. Of course, you get a few people that are going to give you a lot of gains, but you're smart about it. That's how I played. And it's interesting because, like I said, you look at the team and you leave me like, well, this isn't very sexy. This is not a sexy team. Like, this is a bunch of like, okay, steady guys. But at the end, when you're winning, then it's a pretty sexy team.
That's what's sexy.
Right?
Winning
and also, let's be realistic. How much does your team at the end of the season look like the team you drafted?
Please, are you kidding me? I'm looking at my FSGA team that I drafted in June, and I'm like, ooh.
Who are these people? Does that guy play hockey now? Like, what is that? Like, so, I mean, the whole time you're drafting, you're thinking, you know what, this has to change. What can I do to ensure myself the most steady, constant production I can? That is the way I play now. Maybe that's my conservative way of doing it, but you know what? It works.
Maybe I should try drafting with the NHL cheat sheet instead of the NFL one. Just see what happens.
See if it works.
See what happens. I'll be like, yeah, I'm just going to nominate Jaromir Jagr for $1, maybe.
Anybody that has a mullet, you're in.
100%. All right, so auction drafts, we love them.
Yeah.
Love the strategies involved. I love the attitude.
Also, guys, find out who you're playing with and find out who their favorite player is and who their favorite team is. And don't be afraid. Look, if somebody loves Ezekiel Elliott, go ahead, throw him out for $40. See what you can get him to bid up. Or, I don't know, throw him out for $50 because, worst thing that's going to happen, you're going to end up with Ezekiel Elliott for $50. You'll be okay. But go ahead and get these guys to spend money. Find out who they're targeting. Watch the live streams if they're on saying who they like. I didn't say anybody who I liked, right? I've tried to be careful.
We know they're all Cowboys. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, they're definitely all. That's right.
All Cowboys.
All Cowboys.
Sun Tzu, Art of War, know thy enemy. 100%. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Now let's talk snake drafts for a second here, because obviously the majority of the world does a snake draft.
That's right.
Couple of things here. Does draft position matter to you? We'll go specific to 2019 because obviously it changes from year to year where the depth is and really where you want to go. So for this year, does draft position matter to you? Do you have a preference of where you are?
No, I actually don't care where I am because I'm going to change up what I'm doing based on where I am. And I love the fun of that. So I actually like the randomized, you don't find out until an hour ahead of time. And then you think, all right, I'm number 9. What am I going to do? And then you think about it and it makes it fun. That's part of why you got to play in a few different leagues. So you can try a few different things and it's fun.
I've always said to people, I don't care. It doesn't matter what position you draft from. What matters is your plan from drafting
from that
position.
That's right. Because let's say you are number 1 and you take Saquon Barkley. It's going to be a long time till he gets back around to you to pick your next guy, right? There's nothing wrong with picking number 9. You can make some pretty smart calculations at that point. If I take this guy, I can also get this guy.
Dude, I've been doing a couple of best ball drafts, a couple of slow drafts right now. I'm picking 9th in one, 10th in another.
Totally.
And I'm like,
you can totally win from that position.
Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I'll take these guys. I'll take them.
Exactly. Perfect.
Now, have you done a bunch of Superflex leagues, 2 QB leagues at all?
I have not yet done one of these.
You're lucky.
But yeah, they seem tricky. I imagine it changes a lot because we've all kind of gotten in that habit of waiting to draft our quarterback because there's, plenty there. But if you need 2 of them, and maybe you even need 3 of them, depending, right?
Yeah.
You got to adjust. And I imagine what I would do is I would probably take first of all, I would wait and see what everybody else was doing, right? If people aren't jumping on quarterbacks right away, I'm not going to either. But I would probably try to take one in the first, one of the top 12. And then after that, I would wait until, we had gotten through 12. And then I would try to take 2 in pretty quick succession. I think that's what I would do.
It's funny enough that you say that because that's exactly what I did. Like for me, I've always been of that mindset of, you don't want to be the first person to take the quarterback. Let somebody else take Patrick Mahomes and then see how the rest of the room reacts. And if people are like, oh my God, here comes the quarterback run, then you have to kind of jump into it because you don't really want to get left behind for that. Now, if you're in a 12-team 2 QB league and you're picking 12th and you're worried that if you don't take a quarterback with one of those 2 spots, because you think that possibly the quarterback run will happen when it comes back around and then you get screwed because then you have nobody at the end.
Yeah.
Then from that point, I could see using your second pick on it. But what I did this time around, I was picking second. For some reason, they left me Saquon Barkley. I was very happy with that. I take Saquon. Everything else goes around. The rest of the first round is all running backs and wide receivers. Second round, coming back, all running backs and wide receivers. And I was like, okay. I mean, that's great. So what did I do? At 2, I took Patrick Mahomes. And then when the guy behind me took a running back and a wide receiver, I was like, oh, still going to do – okay. Deshaun Watson. And I took the 2 of them.
You did get Deshaun.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
So I start off Saquon Barkley, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. It goes back around. Now, I did that so I could hopefully start that quarterback run, and then people would be like all freaked out.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened. Okay. And then all of a sudden, it was like,
you had all the running backs and wide receivers open for yourself.
Next 2 picks. Go ahead. Take a guess. Just take a guess.
Next 2 picks. Ooh,
You'll never guess.
Antonio Brown?
No. David Montgomery and Chris Carson.
Nice.
So
2 great running backs. Yeah.
2 great running backs. Saquon Barkley, the top 2 QBs, and then I proceeded to fill it. So I'm doing this, and people
what did you do for your wideouts?
What's that?
What did you do for your wideouts?
DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, and Emmanuel Sanders.
I love Emmanuel Sanders as a late round pick.
Come on.
I love that.
Come on.
Nobody's taken. Everyone's like, no, he's got Joe Flacco throwing to him. I'm like, okay, you guys sleep on him because I'm taking him in the late rounds. This guy's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's healthy.
Yeah.
I would.
And then I double tapped the tight end position, with a couple of late guys because I was like, I literally just got 3 phenomenal running backs, the 2 best quarterbacks, and 3 PPR machine receivers.
Right.
And I just couldn't believe it. So, when it comes to that, for me, in a super flex league, I don't want to normally be the first guy to take that quarterback and make that happen there. Like, it's not my ideal. But if they're going to leave them to me, then I'm going to have to jump on them. And then
what are you going to do?
And, if they don't, if they start taking them, crazy early also, then I can just pivot and take those running backs and whatever and just be happy with, I'll take Phillip Rivers and Dak Prescott and then give me Jacoby Brissett.
Absolutely.
Right.
Totally. I mean, I think that's the key in like all these auctions. Every auction format, you have to be willing to pivot. You have to have a plan, but you have to understand it's a loose plan. And you have to have, a decision tree in your head.
Right?
If then.
Do you remember when you were little? Do you remember Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Yes.
It's like reading the bottom, be like,
I've forgotten, but those were awesome.
If you do this, turn to page 72. If you do that, turn to page 68.
Sometimes you go back. Yeah.
What draft is all about.
That's totally what it's about. And that's why you only get better and better the more you do it. And every year you play, it becomes more and more fun. That's what's so great about this. The first year, if you get the bug, like it just doesn't go away.
So any final thoughts here? I just wanted to talk a little draft strategy for people.
Totally.
Listen, player specific, we've got it all for you over at fantasyalarm.com. All the content that you guys see out there, I mean, the draft guide that you have to pay for. Sorry. I feel like you should have to pay for that. But all of this content that we've been rolling out, and that's Jen's videos, that's, articles from Matt Sells and John Mpemba, James Grande, Andrew Cooper, like all of these guys are contributing, and it's all free. Because my feeling about it is just come take it for a test spin, see what we got, prep for your drafts. Once you finish your draft and you're super happy with it, well, then you can pay for our season-long package. But I mean, that's why I figured tonight, strategy-wise, player-specific stuff, hit the site. Make sure you hit that site.
Yeah.
For draft strategy, there's nothing better than 2 people who have just been doing nonstop drafts over and over. Crazy.
Yeah. And we have fun doing it. That's the important thing.
That was the worst job in the world. So bad.
It's horrible. It's horrible. And we're going to be here every Thursday and every Sunday to talk about player specific. So I think this was a great idea tonight. I had a lot of fun.
Any final thoughts? Like if you could give like that one bit of final advice to people walking into the draft room right now, what would it be?
I would say keep calm. Whatever you do, keep calm. If something doesn't go the way you planned, don't freak out. Don't react. Just keep calm, take a breath, reorganize. It's absolutely going to be fine. Like I said, the roster you draft is not going to look the same way on the last day of the season. Tell yourself that. You can't make too big of a mistake. Don't worry. You'll be fine. You can work the waiver wire. Have fun.
There you go. True words have not been spoken. We'll drop the mic on that one there. We'll say it's time for us to go. Big thanks to everybody for tuning in here at the Fantasy Alarm NFL live stream. We will be back.
We will.
Wow. When? Thursday of next week.
Yes.
Right. 1 week from today, we will be back ready for week 1. It's going to be an absolute blast. Thanks so much to Matt Sells for producing. For Jen Piacenti, I'm Howard Bender. Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Alarm. We'll catch you next time.